Happy Thursday evening, everybody. Wes Seiler here with Preserve Navarre Live and Miss Cindy Hall. How are you, Cindy? It's good to see
Good.
you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being here. I'm so
Good.
excited to have Cindy on here. This is a live broadcast that we do every Thursday night. So let me know. I know we got Tom and several others that are already on watching live. Let me know, y'all, if y'all can hear us. We do this live here in Navarre. It's a lot of fun. It's a great show. We stream it on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, a couple different places. Randy is on here. Randy Williams. Hey, good to see you, Randy. You guys let me know if it's coming in clear for you guys. Because we broadcast this, we also record it, so it comes out. It's on here, so we can go back and look at it later and make video clips and everything else. But always a lot of fun doing Preserve Navarre Live on Thursday nights. I also get to email out clips of the show and everything else. We've been doing this now for about 4 or 5 months, Cindy, and it's been a lot of fun to do it, especially, of course, in political season, which is in full steam. Right? It is going crazy right now. I think everybody's getting at least like 5 or 6 texts a day from different candidates, introducing themselves. I get probably a dozen things in the mail, right? It feels like I'm just like cycling through them,
Yeah,
and
me too.
I'm just like, I think everybody's numb. We're like desensitized to it now, it's just like next. And you at this point, you kind of know who you're voting for, but everybody's excited about August 20th coming because we found out the answers, and also it's done, it's done for at least a little while. So, but I'm so grateful to have you on, especially as a candidate running for office. And we're going to talk about that tonight.
Okay.
We're going to talk about you and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, so looks like Randy just said coming in loud and clear, which is great. Appreciate that, Randy. Thank you. We get to have the comments come up during the broadcast whenever we want, which makes it really fun because I never know what people are going to say. And it allows them to ask questions.
Oh.
Yeah, so if you guys
Okay.
have questions as we go through tonight, let me know because I can pull them up like this one and all that stuff, and that makes it so much fun, to talk to
Okay.
people
Yeah.
live, and a lot of them we know, so a lot of fun. I do want to let you know, Cindy, and everybody that's watching, we have a handful of sponsors that make this possible. So we've got a decent little studio that we've built up here with lights and a few other things, and that's thanks to people like Tom Tuttle, who's watching live now, and he's got a shop called the Panhandle Shop that he runs, and he does a lot of beautiful American flags.
Oh.
Yeah, take a look at this woodwork, and he does all kinds of other stuff like that, custom projects for you. He'll put little inscriptions on there if you want. If you want something from the Declaration of Independence or a Bible verse or a name,
Perfect gifts for men.
So they did it for me when I came back. I was overseas most of last year, and when I got back in the fall, in October, there's Chuck and Nancy in Jersey, and there's my son down there. And I had just gotten home a couple days prior, and they had like one of those flags with my name on it, and it was sweet. So, and they'll do them up real nice, and you can do them big like that, or you can do them smaller, however you want it. So they'll do custom work for you guys. It's just a passion project for Tom and Helen. So they help us out with the show. I don't know how often you've been down to Navarre, Cindy. I know you've been campaigning and have been here for a while, but Stripes and Andy D's, two of my favorite restaurants here. Amazing folks. Robert Reyes owns Stripes. Amazing veteran, well loved by the entire community. Wonderful
Yes.
place to go out to eat. They have a lot of entertainment, comedians, bands, the whole thing. And then Andy D's is another one. Andy D's is awesome because they are across on the beach, and they renovated the place about a year ago. And now the sales have just gone through the roof. Everybody loves it. It is a true local spot.
Okay.
Everybody goes to Andy D's, and everybody loves what he's done with the place. A lot of beautiful artwork, new menu, all the stuff, and he and his wife work so hard to make that place run as well as it does. And then I love talking about this one. Carmen Reynolds, friend of ours. I know she's been up to the RECs many times, but Carmen is the brain behind a huge effort in Santa Rosa County that affects us all, and it's the Veterans Treatment Court. And what this is doing is it's looking for veterans who are at risk. So folks that could possibly be in a dark spot, maybe they've had a run-in with the law or something like that, but they had time in the service, and so it looks to help them. And it says, hey, this person was at a good spot, and now look at where they're at. What can we do in the justice system to give them some military-focused attention? Maybe some of their problems are service-related. How do we handle them and then get them back on their feet, get them back into society with a good job? They have this in Okaloosa County, in Escambia, but not in Santa Rosa until Carmen got involved. And she said, hold on a minute. Why don't we have this in Santa Rosa County? They said, well, we just don't know if there's a need. And she demonstrated that. Yep. She's like, are you kidding me with all the veterans we have here? And so she brought that to the state rep, Joel Rudman. She brought it to the county commissioners. She brought it to Governor DeSantis. And then they signed off of it. Senator Broxton helped. A whole bunch of people were involved to get this official, and now we have it. Now they're building it in Santa Rosa County, and then she's helped us out. So if you're interested in getting involved with that effort, it's beautiful. Veterans Treatment Court, number 4, SRC at gmail.com. That's Carmen's email, and she'll get you help. You know, they need mentors, they need people to help, you know, raise awareness about the whole thing. So a lot of cool stuff, and all make this show possible. So we get to talk about those folks. We get to talk about folks like yourself, and we get to talk about the news. And every now and then, those topics overlap, right? So when we're talking about the news, we're talking about you, right? Take a look at this. This is great. So I saw this in the news today, is that Cindy Hall and her campaign running for Supervisor of Election is one of the top stories in the Pensacola News Journal, which is great. I'm sure it'll be in Navarre Press and a bunch of others as well. But they were talking about the incumbent is now facing a challenge from you. And that's the first time that that's happened for her since she started, I think. That's what they were saying in the P&J. So how does that feel, being on the front page and all that stuff? It means you must be doing something right to get that kind of attention. So
yeah, but there was one thing that got wrong. And and I want to clarify that.
Yeah,
there was something about the signatures.
Okay.
Completely, I don't know what they thought I said, but that was not right at all. Everything else I felt like was very unbiased. I mean, basically it was what we said at the Baghdad Firehouse.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, that's the content.
So campaign event and all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, the signatures, what I was saying was that because I wrote the Secretary of State, the definition of the word signatures has been added to the oath. The oath. Because when I was in training one time, they had the audacity to say, some of you think that a signature is the person saying that's who they are. And that is not what it means at all.
Yeah. So we're going to get into all that. I can't wait. See, that you're jumping right into the details of it, which is great. You're going to have to break that down for a lot of us because a lot of people don't know. I mean, like I was saying at the beginning, some people are just kind of overwhelmed by all the attention that's brought on local stuff right now. I remember, Cindy, when I first moved here, I didn't know any of these folks, right? Like, I moved here, and it was right in the middle of an election, and I'm like, who is Jerry Cooey? What does, he stand for? And I got to make a decision and vote for him, and I've only been here for a short time. Military folks who have just moved in, or they're deployed, and then they come back and they're like, oh, I got to vote, you know? You're going to have to break that down, I think, for a lot of us to understand, because, you know, all we see is like, oh, okay, there's an election, and there's 2 names on the ballot, but how do we make a decision when we don't know the details like you do, right? So I'm looking forward to getting into some of that stuff. But so love talking about the news and what's going on. And I wanted to talk too about why we do this podcast, because we cover the news, we cover what's going on, but really the focus behind this is local heroes, right? We love doing that because I was talking to people online today and social media, and it gets wild and people throw out all kinds of stuff like that. And sometimes it brings out the worst in folks. But we can forget that there's also the best in folks, right? And what I get to do with this podcast is to highlight some of those people, especially in Navarre. That's what we love to do. It's like people drive through Navarre, Cindy, and they see the beach and the beautiful views and all that stuff, and that's a huge part of it. But there's also a lot of our icons, our heroes, the type of people, the legacy that they leave behind. Folks like Robert Reyes, I've mentioned. There's Rick Landreth in the top right. He was, if you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down, they portrayed him. The actual guy did that in real life, and he was one of the people they portrayed in the movie. So he was over there in Mogadishu and did a lot of that stuff. NFL players, we've got multiple guys that are going to be playing on Sundays this fall who went to Navarre High School, right? Wow. Jordan Jefferson and Michael Carter, people like that. They grew up right around here, you know, went to the same places that we do. Kevin Lucas is another one, entrepreneurs that are making a huge difference. He's in the medical field and doing all kinds of innovative medical techniques and really cool stuff. And you never know, you know, you're just going around, you know, your day or whatever, you see a bunch of tourists and everything else, you would never know that you have those kind of incredible people in Navarre. And so I get to highlight them, but I also love to highlight folks like you as well who are, you know, making a difference in this community as well as the entire county. So every now and then, and especially during election season, it's fun to take a break from Navarre and look at what's going around, because everything you're doing is going to affect us too, right?
Right.
that's going to be
Yes.
fun to talk about. Last thing too, before we start getting into some of the things that you're doing, is we do have an event for folks that are watching. If you haven't heard, this Sunday at 5 p.m. we're going to be up close to Milton over on Avalon Boulevard. We're going to be talking about a vote on incorporation that's coming up. So we're going to be going over the details. I get a whole bunch of questions of, how is this vote going to happen, and who's running it, and how do I sign up? Is there an absentee process? How are you going to check to make sure people are actually registered? All those kind of details, the kind that you're doing at, on the county level. We're going to be answering those questions and giving you a lot of that information. We're going to do what we can to stream it online, and then we'll have all the information afterwards as well. But it's a really exciting time for our group to be able to get to this point, because voting is important. Preaching to the choir on that one. So if you're interested in that, let us know. We'll be happy to get you the details. You can see a lot of them right there in terms of the address and all that stuff. So looking forward to it. But I want to focus tonight on you, Cindy, and I want to talk a little bit more, get to know you, and how you came to this area, how you got involved, where you grew up, all those things. And thankfully, you've given me some beautiful pictures like this. And I love it when people do that, because you get to see a whole other side of them that you might not see, when they're going out doing their thing, or, like you campaigning. So talk to me. Let's start at the beginning. Talk to me about some of the early photos and pictures and experiences that you had growing up. So what's this one?
This is when I was in the Junior Miss pageant. This was in the program, Meet Me in St. Louis. And yes, my community insisted, much to my chagrin, that I be in the Junior Miss.
Yeah.
That afforded me a college scholarship.
Oh,
It
really?
was a scholarship program.
That's awesome.
Yes. I come from very humble beginnings. I grew up in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, small town.
Yeah.
My parents said, you're going to college and you're paying for it, but I didn't know how. My community put me up for the Junior Miss, so I got a scholarship to Columbia College.
That's so cool.
Yes. And then, I was National Honor Society cheerleader,
Yeah.
all that. I was always an overachiever. And then when I got to college, I had asked my counselor, I said, my family can't support me. I've got to have a career where I can have a job day one.
Right.
So he said, you won't make a lot of money at it, but if you get a degree as a clinical lab scientist, you'll always have a job. So that's what I did.
Smart.
I got hired. Yes.
Very smart.
I always have a job. But I went to, my first career started at Barnes Hospital.
Okay.
And there I was the Missouri Society of Clinical Medical Technologists is what we would call back then. I was a hematology chair. And then when they would pay for my MBA, I started getting my MBA at St. Louis University at night.
Wow.
And a Fortune 100 company, Abbott Laboratories, recruited me to be a sales rep. I was the first woman and the first scientist they ever hired directly into sales.
Well, holy smokes! All right, I'm trying to keep up. So we got this. So you've got the incredible experiences, and this was in high school, right? With Junior Miss.
Mm-hmm.
I think I worked with one of those pageants before. They had me MC it in high school, so I got an idea of what they went through and worked for. I think this is where it came from, right? I had no idea you got a scholarship from it.
Yes, that's what it is. It's a scholarship program for girls who have great potential and intellect and everything, but just don't have the means to get to college. So it's kind of a way to facilitate.
Yeah,
that.
and you were at the state level, looks like. Is that what this is saying?
Yes.
Holy smokes! Wow.
Yeah. I did not
really
win.
cool.
I was not Miss Missouri.
Yeah, but enough to get you where you wanted to go, right?
Yes, it helped me get through college.
Earn some of those successes and things like that, and set yourself up. So that's amazing. And then tell me more about the degree. So you mentioned an MBA. What else did you have? I'm just trying to keep up.
I didn't finish my MBA.
Okay.
Because when they recruited me back then, there wasn't an internet. Not every university had, and they relocated me to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and I had the entire southeast Missouri. But Abbott Laboratories, they ensure that their reps are educated. So basically, I got a real-world MBA. I had to go in-house to Chicago for weeks, come out in the field, go back into Chicago, and in-house, back out in the field, back into Chicago, back out in the field, and they made sure that we could run our business. And in fact, my first year out, my boss traveled with me once, and it was to go buy shoes at the Florsheim factory.
Yeah.
It wasn't to check on me. So they made us capable of running a business independently and making our own decisions all day. And the
Really
15 gentlemen that were my coworkers told me it's so hard to sell capital. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
My first year, I exceeded the goal.
Nice.
So I was promoted then to Kansas City, where I was over Kansas, Nebraska, and western Missouri.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then you mentioned a group that you were a part of. So I'm going to try to find this here. I think We talked
Oh,
about some.
yeah.
So what was this group again?
That was our St. Louis region. We had a playoff where we had 2 districts and we would compete for sales, and the one that won, which was us, we got a lobster and steak dinner.
Nice.
And we got to golf, and then the losers had to be our caddies. So it was called the Golf Caddy Classic.
And that was a fun company. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this was my first group that I was part of. I had 5 different territories that I was in, but
Wonderful.
That's my glory days in Abbott. I loved it.
So a lot of business experience, learning how to work with people and build like the teamwork and the camaraderie and all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Very important skills for life, right? And then stuff like this. So
yes, Mike, at Abbott, we had national sales meetings. They would always have fabulous speakers.
Yeah.
And Mike Huckabee was one of them.
Yeah.
So that's a picture of that was one of our meetings that he attended and spoke.
Was this kind of your first kind of intro into politics or working with people who were politically active?
Oh, back then I didn't know. Oh no, I hate politics. I never want anything to do with politics.
Yeah.
No, I know.
And now here you are. You got signs and the whole thing.
Oh my goodness! But that's part of the problem is those of us who just want to live quiet lives and enjoy raising our kids and doing what we do. If we don't get involved with politics, then somebody else will. And I struggled with this, and a friend of mine said, if you want it done right, Cindy, you're going to have to do it yourself.
So there's some people who have said the exact same thing. Bob Burkett said the same thing. The exact same thing. He said, he chose to run because he was sitting there and he heard like the spiritual motivation, right? He felt that from God that said, hey, somebody's got to step up. Why not you, right? The Isaiah type, here I am, send me type experience. Ray Eddington said the same thing. He said, I got experience coming from Tennessee. Why not? And look where he is. Joel Rudman, he talked about how he felt like he was done after his first time. He had done what he wanted to do, and he was just like, do I need to stick around? And then all of a sudden he saw the need, and he was just like, I know how to do this. I know how to represent people and work with them. I got to do it. I got to stick around. So you're in good company if that's your motivation. There's a lot of people. And I'd venture to say folks like Mike, Huckabee know that. He seems like a really sweet guy from what I know. Okay, so you got that, and along the way, family, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is your son? Okay.
Yes. And his new bride.
Yeah.
Yes. So my son's kind of a chip off the old block. He too wants to fix the world's problem. When I was on the Trump campaign, I was the field organizer. I'd every day go out and go, I'm going to go save the world.
Right.
And that's what he is. He wants to save the world. He's an economic analyst at the Heritage Foundation, and I wanted him to stay home close so bad, and we kind of got into it. And he's like, Mom, I can solve these problems. I really have the answers for the whole nation. I have to go to D.C. So he's up there at the Heritage Foundation. She's at a think tank, and they are writing policy to get manufacturing back and taxes to where we want them to be, and how they're going to steer our country if we can get on the right track and stay there. So amazing. Mom's got to do her part and run for Supervisor of Elections.
So a couple questions about this picture on the bottom right for him.
Yeah, he went to UWF. He was the most outstanding student in comprehensive economics. Then he went to Pepperdine on a scholarship, scholastic scholarship. He was editor-in-chief and vice president of the public policy and politics. Yes, and so he's actually been published 4 or 5 times. One of them in the DC, the DC newspaper, Washington Times, and the Epic Times. Cool. Yeah, and he just turned 27.
Amazing. We're gonna.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Here's my question: does he visit? Does he come back home to Santa Rosa County at all?
Not much.
Okay, when he does, we're going to put him in that seat.
Okay.
I got questions for an economist from Heritage that I could use some help with, right?
Okay.
I could definitely use his help.
He'll be here over Labor Day weekend.
Perfect. Okay. We're going to sign him up because I got plenty of things that I could use his help with. What an amazing guy. So I spent a year in D.C. after I graduated high school, right? Because same kind of motivations of like, I want to get out there and see what problems the world is facing, and young guy just trying to like figure out where I belonged in the world. And also, if I had an internship right around the time that Alito was coming up for the Supreme Court, he was going up for the nominations. Totally different time. Tom DeLay was the in the House of Representatives. And then I worked for a congressman named Sam Johnson from Texas, who was an amazing war hero from the Vietnam War, who had spent time in the prisons there and survived as a POW. 7 years, right? He had survived in there, got out, made it back home. Then he ran for Congress and won. And he was out there fighting for, the military, saying, "Hey, we've got these guys in Iraq and Afghanistan. Don't leave them behind." He was sitting there negotiating for us to get what we needed to fight, and just an amazing human being, right? So I had a blast. I loved it. But I spent a lot of time at the Heritage Foundation as well, because he was a conservative and all that. So he'd go over there and speak at different events. So I'd just be in tow and, sit and listen and soak it up. So what an amazing experience. So I'd love to meet him at some point. Sounds like a great guy. You have to bring him by some of the meetings and stuff that we've been to, because I'd love to hear more.
But he too hates politics.
He's trying to fix it, right? He's trying to do some
like
of
Mom,
the research, it sounds like. I mean, that's the part that's fun to me, is I'm kind of the same way. As I love economics, and I love trying to look at behavioral economics and what causes people to save or spend. And I mean, look at the stock market right now, and it's going nuts. And is the Fed gonna reduce rates in September? We think so, and then people are gonna buy more stock and all this stuff, and it's like, goodness, we've got to get government out of some of these things, right? But yeah, I love some of that stuff. I love the urban economic side of it, of how do you make these things work. So very similar interest, because that's kind of taking a step out of all the vitriol and getting to the problem solving process, right? So I love that. But talking about solving problems and talking about people getting motivated, so yay politics, don't want to get into that, and yet here we are. So how do you... I know where he's at, and he's getting smart and doing great things. I know you're doing great things, but help me connect the dots, because last time I checked, you were running for an office. And how does that happen? Did you get to the point where you're doing this?
That's quite a journey.
Okay.
And kind of like you were talking about Bobby hearing from God, and all that, and it's like, I think God just kind of got me here, because by being a clinical lab scientist, everything's about accuracy, and every discrepancy has to be reconciled, and everything's documented and transparent. And so I expect that everything in elections would be like that.
Yeah.
And then in also having my career with Abbott, being able to run a business and know how to move logistics and databases and people and manage multitudes of balls juggled at the same time. And then when I retired from Abbott, I went to Sacred Heart, and I was hired as the inspector and auditor over the laboratories. So again, my name and my credentials go behind that everything heretofore is accurate.
Got it.
So I have this whole mindset that everything's got to be right. Everything's about integrity.
Yeah.
And when I went to work the elections, conversation after conversation, incidents, things that happened, things that were said, it just throws me into a tizzy, because that is not, the focus is not accuracy and integrity and transparency.
Interesting. So a couple things on that real quick, because I just want to cue it, because that's a lot of important stuff. One of the things is you talked about teamwork, right? If I understand correctly, there's about 7 people or so that are working at the county office, right? That's the team that they've got right now. So somewhere between 6 to 8 type people. How many folks did you work with in your business experience?
Oh my goodness!
How big were the teams that you worked with?
Well, I was responsible for 200 accounts.
Okay.
Every hospital, multitudes of sales cycles with doctors and nurses and dietitians and marketing and the people who do the contracts. So I was trying to get multiple decision makers and champions in any one location to decide on a particular product. But while I'm selling something for wounds over here, I'm selling nutrition over here and lab equipment over there. So it's that's what
kind of puts it in context. Is we're talking about a pretty small team, right? That you dedicate yourself to, I'm sure, in that job, and making sure that they feel motivated to come to work and appreciate it and all that stuff. But you've done that before with much larger teams, so this is a lot smaller, and I'm sure it has its own challenges. But putting that in perspective based on your experience, the other thing is you talked about accuracy, and this is just me relating to it, but like the military side of me started screaming. From my personal experience, that accuracy and attention to detail is what we call it. Attention to detail. When you're going through the military stuff, your first few months, years in, it's all about detail. I remember they would get upset if you're like, hey, you didn't get this part of your chin when you were shaving, which right now I don't have to worry about, which is great. But like, they would say that, or like, your uniform isn't perfect. It's not completely perfect. Like you missed a spot when you were ironing it or something like that, right? Like, it's that type, and it's just so annoying when you're young and you're just like, oh, I'm going with this. You didn't come all the way down with your push-ups. Like, you were almost there, but not. So now you got to run a mile, right? Like all that kind of stuff. Why do we do that? It wasn't until I was on the other side and helping train and teach people that I realized we're kind of really beating into their heads attention to detail, focus on the small things, make sure that you do your job thoroughly, because later on you could be working with planes, nuclear weapons, who knows what, right? Intelligence work. And if you're wrong, then the stakes are not just shaving your face or your uniform, the stakes are much higher. And we want people to have trust in the system, right? We want the constituents, the citizens, the civilians to sit there and see people in uniform and be like, those people are working hard for me. I trust those people because, my gosh, look, their uniform looks great. The way they carry themselves looks great. They're confident. They're working hard. You can tell that's a person who focuses on the right thing, so that Americans trust us that we're actually going out there and defending the country, right? You could have a high degree of trust. And then I look at what you're talking about, voting. That's the office you're running for, right, Cindy?
Right.
Is something that we should have trust in.
Yes.
It should be, obvious that, hey, this system is working. But I don't know. When you talk about the attention to detail issues and things like that, and I think about this especially nationally, there's questions all the time about that. So tell me more about the office itself, because like we're talking about, this isn't a county commissioner, okay? It's not a state rep. It's not a city council person. It's supervisor of elections. I didn't even realize this office was up for election. I thought it was appointed, as a staff or administrator. Talk to me about the actual position you're running for and what you do. What are the jobs associated with this office?
Okay, so the supervisor of elections, basically, as the incumbent says, is ministerial. You're just basically setting everything up for the election process. It involves managing the candidates and keeping, like myself, on track when their financial reports and making sure all the documentation is the way it should be, and making sure that everything's done at the right times. There are penalties if it's not. It's maintaining the voter rolls. There's a more daily maintenance, and then there's a periodic maintenance. It's helping the public understand how to register to vote and where to go to vote, which is different in early voting than on election day. So you have to educate the public. Doing the poll training, bringing the public in and training them to work. It's a matter of the machinery, which I'd like to get rid of. But the machines, they're supposed to be certified. They have to be maintained, stored. They have to be shipped to all the different locations and brought back. And then there's the votes that have to be tabulated, and then they call it an audit, but they're doing a validation. But anyway, there's that process, and then getting it to Tallahassee and the connectivity of that. So there's a lot involved behind the scenes that people really wouldn't be aware of, but it's more it's more like clerical duties, management duties, logistics.
It sounds like a thankless job. So, like, God bless you for running for it, right? Like, God bless the people who sign up for this.
It's not fascinating or interesting.
It sounds like being a referee. That's what it sounds like. It's like the referees. I love college football, right? Like, I'm a big Alabama fan, but you forget that the referees are even there, right? Until there's a problem, until there's a bad call. And you're like, what? And then you're just mad at this guy that you don't even know, right? And you're like, he got the call wrong, and you're like furious because, if they didn't watch the play perfectly, then boom, there's a small mistake that can change the entire impact of who wins and loses and all that stuff. So, thousands of people are mad at them. But it's this process that we kind of take for granted.
Right.
I think the medical field, I was thinking about that too when you're talking about your background, is we just kind of assume that all doctors are great. You just assume that they all take the same oath. Cool, okay, they went to medical school. You just kind of, hey, they're all doing it 100%. And you think about, wait a minute, that's not real life. Not everybody's as proficient. Not everybody's as motivated. Not everybody's in the right headspace. Oh, gosh, if some are good and some are bad, then I got a lot more work to do. And this is not something I should take for granted. And I think that's where where
Right.
you were at, probably before you started this, and you
Right.
started realizing, hey, there's a better way to
Things.
do some of these things.
Yes.
So, what are some of the issues that you've found as you go through this? As we think about voting, and of course, we're about to do it, on August 20th in the primaries, and then in November. What are some of the issues that you found that have really motivated you and gotten your whole attention to detail mind working?
Well, I could tell multitudes of stories of things that happened to me.
Yeah.
That things were not as they should be. But what's most disturbing to me is that those of us who go to the polls once every 2 years and everything goes nicely and the results turn out the way we expect them to, we assume that everything's done right, particularly when we're obeying the laws. The problem is the laws are written to bloat the voter rolls, obscure our ability to know how our vote is actually being tabulated.
Interesting.
And yes, and that there is the potential for foreign influence in our process, and that Tallahassee has not made the laws that would have done away with these things.
Yeah.
So, not now.
I
must say this: Bernie Jacques is my hero.
Yeah.
He's a congressman down in Central Florida, and he wrote a law that would eliminate the foreign influence and allow us to do hand count paper ballots, which is basically the only way that you can absolutely make sure that you don't have foreign influence.
Yeah.
And Joel Redmond, our own congressman,
Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah,
Congressman
right.
Redmond, he co-sponsored that bill, and they pushed it, but it did not make it through. Now, I was part of election integrity groups, Defend Florida, Virginia Institute, True the Vote. I follow a lot of these, but Defend Florida, I was actually knocking doors and finding, people that, for instance, this gentleman we were talking to, we thought he voted. No, he doesn't even vote. The person that was placing the votes at his house was the person who owned it 6 years prior.
Oh, wow.
We found fields of trees that was an address somebody had voted at, things like this.
Holy smokes.
And
Wow.
Defend Florida and others push legislation. We've got the SB 524 that got into place January 2023, and it would have actually set up a system where people could be removed from the voter rolls.
That makes sense.
And then nothing was done with that. Our supervisor of elections claimed, I don't have any rules to follow. So nothing was done. And then when SB 7050 went into place, which would allow Governor DeSantis to run for presidency and stay as governor, then that got watered down, and we're back to the bloated voter rolls that we had before, and it's going to remain that way for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Now, as I understand it, the Florida Supervisors of Elections, there's 67 of them.
Okay.
They do not have to adhere to Florida Sunshine laws as their NGO, which is their professional organizations. I guess it's like CPAs have their professional organization, or MedTechs. And so anyways, they can be wined and dined by vendors, and we don't know what's going on behind those closed doors.
Really?
But that they actually had some influence to play on that voter roll cleanup not happening.
Right.
So that is more than just being sloppy or lazy or just not being meticulous. That was over the top.
Well, going back to the referee thing, like I said, I'm Crimson Tide all day long, but I don't want our coach taking the referees out for lunch. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want him taking them on a private jet. Like, please don't do that. Even though I want us to win, let's win fair and square.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, let's keep those people separate from any type of, like, influence where there could be, an ulterior motive. There could be some type of bias in that. Like, just stay away, right? Because then you start to lose faith in the entire system.
Well, and two, when we're dealing with the laws, and we had made such success in Defend Florida, and when that happened, it was so, it just destroyed our morale, because we had worked for 3.5 years to make that happen. And we really should have, in my opinion, our voter rolls should be representative of the military who declare this their home of record.
Yeah.
And people who actually live here.
Right.
Okay? Not deceased people, not people who've lived here 20 years ago and lived in Connecticut ever since, or people that have been on the voter rolls for 42 years and they haven't voted. They are so bloated, but the way the law is written is that a person, let's say they move away or they die or whatever, they are going to stay on the voter rolls until the next election. And then if they don't vote, then a postcard would go to the house, the residence where they were, and it was incumbent on that person to write undeliverable, doesn't live here, and get it back through the postage system to the SOE for them to come off.
Yeah,
that is how the law is written. How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, it's wild because so part of it is the threats to the system, right? Kind of like going back to that for a second, because I think that's an important point that you see that not everybody else thinks about, because the average person is like seeing voting is like something I got to do. Oh yeah, I got to do that before it's too late, and pick up the kids and get an oil change and everything else, right? That's how they're thinking. And of course they would never think about attacking the system. It's a job they got to do. It's a civic duty, right? They're not thinking about someone who wants to attack that system, and can that system actually stand up to those attacks. So talk about like the foreign influence, right? So you've got people that just want to create chaos. Could be state actors, could be but people that just want to cause discord in America because it sets us back. And then China and Russia and all these other countries can, go off doing what they're doing while America's fighting itself, right? So there's people that want to create that kind of chaos that could attack our system. People on social media doing that, everything else. And then there's people, and I hate to say this, but there's people who don't fight fair, right? They're running for office and they're just going to win no matter what, right? And I wish that didn't happen. And that's not you, it's not me, but those people exist, unfortunately, and they'll win at every cost. They'll just say, cool, let's stuff ballot boxes any way that we can, right? Because we got to hold on to whatever it is, Can the system defend itself from those people, or do they just skate on by, right? That, to me, once you start to understand that, hey, there are people who will cheat or who will cause chaos, right? All of a sudden, the threat gets real. And now the sacred right to vote that we have is under attack. Our right is under attack because, and that's kind of why you were asking earlier, like, why did you put right to vote on there? And I put right to vote because listen to you talk at some of the meetings that we've been at. That's what I hear talking about is my right to vote is diminished. It is not protected if the system isn't fair. Because now my vote is taken away. It's worth less because someone cheated. The
way I do it is like it's matter and antimatter. They negate each other. So if there's a vote here and there's not one to offset it, then that person wins. And the problem with it is I feel like my forefathers, they fought and died. And they fought, the British, the most, sophisticated military on the planet, to give me all these years later one tiny vote that's just a whisper of millions. And by golly, for me to think that there might be one person out there that votes that shouldn't, as far as I'm concerned, they're the one who negated my vote.
Right.
I take it very, very personally, and it is precious to me, and I am willing to stick myself out there. I have got solutions to the gaps in our integrity, and I will implement them, and there will be backlash, and I will withstand it, and we will go to the Supreme Court if we have to, and we're going to get these things rectified, because we are at a precipice in our country, and we cannot afford for this lackadaisical, keeping the voter rolls bloated. We've got tabulators they tell us are not hooked to the internet, but all the evidence appears that they are. We've got the vendors who are protected by rights as proprietor rights to know how they're counting our votes, but we can't know how they're counting our votes. So these things are going to have to be addressed, and it's not going to happen with staying the status quo. It's going to take somebody with courage, somebody who will hit the mark, somebody who will come up with creative ideas and implement what needs to be done, like verifying citizenship. By doing hand counts. Even on the audits, we could do, that is an option, but our SOE gets to choose, are we going to use an automated method or are we going to do a manual method? And she chooses the automated. I disagree with that, because if one can be hacked, the other
the liability
can be hacked. So that's why I'm running, is because I feel a sense of desperation that our election process is contaminated by the laws and the way they're written, and the public has no idea. No idea.
And I totally agree. And the patriotism, like I can feel it when you're talking, because the right of vote is so critical. It is the difference between us as a country, as a republic, where the politicians and the powerful interest answer to us, and some type of dictatorship or autocracy where the elections are just fraudulent, right? And you see that in North Korea, Russia, some of these other countries we've talked about where the elections are a sham if they even have them at all, right? And so the powerful don't really have to answer to the people unless they're going to take up arms and fight. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's going back to why America was started. We didn't have a vote.
Right.
You know, we said, hey, we want to be independent. They were like, we don't care. You're right. Boston Massacre, we'll take you out if you say that again. You know, like, it was these type of incidents where Americans started to realize, oh my gosh, we have no voice, you know? And then when they created the United States, it was, let's make this a country where voting is key, where the people actually can hold the powerful accountable. And then over time expanded, hey, we're not allowing people with different skin colors, not allowing women to vote, right? We should, you know, if they're all created equal, then they should. Then they get the right to vote. All of a sudden now the system has more accountability. But if people don't fight and defend and recognize that their right to vote is under attack, then they're losing the most important thing that we have as a tool right now, short of armed violence and all that stuff. They're the most important constitutional tool that we have is to vote. Because you look at the elections today, right? And you look at what's going on. If you can just buy your office and be done with it, then the system answers to money. And I think that people are very frustrated because they feel like the system almost does that. You know, it's like if you can just buy an ad and, you know, if you and I are running against each other, right? And I just buy an ad and I put Joe Biden next to you, and that's enough to convince people to vote against you. And then I put Donald Trump next to me, and then I just run photoshopped ads, and then that's all I have to do. We don't have to talk about anything. The elections are buyable, right? And the people are easy to manipulate. However, if people actually do have a voice and they can see through this kind of stuff and they can actually get to know what this person's running for and doing all these things and then make a choice,
money.
Then all of a sudden it answers to the folks and not just the money that's, you know, swinging.
But also the process has to be built in so that you don't have extra names in there that people can get an absentee ballot, because all you got to do is call in and say, hey, I need an absentee ballot, and it goes.
And that's the point. Is it's not just negative ads that are going on right now. It is
the process.
A system of liabilities where the process itself could be undermined, and then they don't even have to do negative ads. Well, you just, you know, it's like on people on Facebook. You know, they buy a bunch of like fake people to, you know, be on their page. What if people were doing that with votes? Well, hey, if you pay $2 million, then I got your votes right here.
Well, that's what happens with bloated voter rolls. That's win. The opportunity. But also,
wild.
Yeah, it's
absolutely wild.
But what we need to do is verify citizenship, which is not being done right now. And from what I can tell, 98.045F says the supervisor shall determine eligibility. F is if they're not a U.S. citizen. So our current incumbent says, I wouldn't even know how to begin to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I have ideas. Employers use E-Verify. The clerk of court has jury pools.
Yeah.
We actually do have access to SAVE, which our Secretary of State declares, and he's probably right, it's not up to date.
Yeah.
But the DMV has people bring in their birth certificate. The good thing about that is that they can distinguish who is a citizen and who's not, and they have that database.
Yeah.
But the non-citizen gets a driver's license that looks just like yours and mine, so a poll worker doesn't know the difference. In fact, even an employee in the SOE office doesn't know the difference. If they are allowed to just take that driver's license they got, it looks like ours, they 2 or 3 weeks later go to the SOE's office, they can fill out a registration, put that driver's license number on there. It goes to Tallahassee, who does not check for citizenship, and then they can verify that the driver's license is okay, and there it goes.
Right.
And that is a problem. So I would implement those processes to verify citizenship, because I think 98.045 gives that. And actually, I had called Maria Matthews, the division director. She's the director of the Division of Elections up in Tallahassee, and I asked her, are you checking citizenship? She said, no, that's done at the local level before they put the registration in.
Where they're saying
but
they're
it's
not doing it. So is there any, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, is there any communities where they're implementing some of the things that you're suggesting?
I don't know. I mean, I just come up with these ideas out of my head because as a sales rep, you know, my boss said, go sell this, and I had to come up with all the solutions. So I am solution oriented.
Yeah.
So that's just my way of dealing with it. We've got a problem. Here's some solutions.
let's try it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And why do we just throw our hands in the air and do nothing about it?
Because again, people don't understand the need.
I tell you, there's no accountability.
Yeah. I would love to see, because I know a lot of people are facing this problem. It's not like you said, there's foreign influence and things like that, liabilities throughout the system, right? I wonder about different areas where different solutions are being implemented, and I hope to see that, because it's the kind of thing where, if you have an inspection or you try something new, right, does it actually reveal some of the problems, right? Because people that say, oh, there's nothing there, right? But then then all of a sudden, if you try something new, it might reveal that it could be better, and I'd love to see that if they were to start implementing some of the things that you talk about, right? One of two things is going to happen. Either, everybody who votes is a citizen, this was a waste of time, I don't know why we put these security measures in, or they start to find, oh my gosh, there were some people that were trying to cheat. Our process isn't secure, and now it's a big thing.
That's what I want to do, is tighten things up.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
To talk about the tabulators, or what I think is the nemesis, because those black box machines, what goes on inside of them, we are not allowed to know how it's counting our vote.
Oh, really?
And when you put your ballot in, does it come up and say, hey, you voted for Trump, Redmond, Gates? Does it? It doesn't. So what you get is a green check mark. Well, as a scientist, and I've got to have evidence for everything, and I got to reconcile everything, I don't want a stupid green check mark. I want a receipt that tells me how did I vote.
Yeah.
But we don't get that. It's not transparent, and it's not transparent by design, because those vendors could make that software to give us a receipt to show us who we're voting for. They could have not asked for proprietary rights, because it's just optical. This is everywhere in our society. It's a light that shines down, and it's either reflecting or absorbing light. This is not worthy of a proprietary status. But what that does is it allows them, if they wanted to, fractionate or flip those votes. And if we're taking it from the tabulator to the automated, well, I call it validation, it's not an audit, then you wouldn't detect those manipulations. Whereas we do have an option in the law to count paper ballots and check them. Then we might catch those.
Right.
So I would change that process. It's already in the law. That's how I would do it as an SOE, because I have the latitude. But our current SOE does not want to do that, because it would take time, and she wants to get those results to Tallahassee, because the whole world's waiting on it.
Because she used to it. She's been part of the process for a while, and I'm sure there's nothing, because if she did find a whole lot of problems, and all of a sudden that would cast doubt on her time, in office. How long has this been an issue? It would create a firestorm, because again, we're banking on the whole, people trusting the system thing.
Yeah.
The minute people realize it's bleeding, then all of a sudden it's how deep do the problems go, right? So there's a natural incentive there to not, want to look at this stuff, because it would cast
I actually
doubt.
feel quite sorry for her because of that.
Well, that's what just takes the humility to recognize, look, if there's some problems in this, I would want to know so that I can fix them. And if I'm responsible for those, then let's get it done. Let's not suffocate the accountability measure. Let's look at those and be collaborative. Because, I think about, the potential, if you had a more collaborative relationship, possibly some of these things could have gotten solved earlier. You might not be running, you'd be
I would not. I do not
spend more time with your son and, in Heritage Foundation.
But when I asked, I was like, okay, so what do we do if the signatures don't match? It don't matter.
You should have seen some of the people from our group when we went up to the county over this past month and a half, because they're like, of course the county commissioners are going to let us have a vote. Why wouldn't they? They're conservatives, they're patriots. They keep saying they have nothing to lose if Navarre incorporates. Come on up. And then okay, we'll see, right? Then we go up there and we say, hey, can we please have the right to vote? And 3 of the guys are like, no. And I'm going to invent 1,000 reasons why, because of, whatever I can find, And then no matter what we did, upgrading our feasibility study, bringing state, wrap it up there, all those things, talking to them, having emails, having 20, 30 people show up, none of it even fazed them. They didn't get anywhere close to allowing a vote. And people were shocked. They were like, oh, they don't want us to vote. They're trying to protect something, right? And I was like, right? Your rights are not nearly as secure as you think they are.
Exactly
they
what
come
I find
from
with
God.
the elections.
They're given to us by Him, but they can be threatened by people, right? And the right to vote is by far one of the most essential and critical rights because it is our means of accountability. And I see you as a measure of that accountability. And
yes.
So I'm so glad the Supervisor of Elections is an elected office, right? It may not be a politician of sorts.
Right, no problem.
But I'm glad because you can run for it and you can kind of like be a source of accountability. Hey, if you think that the system is fine and you don't want to hear what I have to say, cool, then you've got someone you can vote for. But at least for me, like I've seen some problems that I want to talk about, and now I can force that conversation. And when going back to the news, when you know you've got folks putting out articles like this, I love this, right? Me as like a patriot, I love this because let's challenge every office.
Oh, right.
Going back to Bobby and all the rest of them, and you know all these people that have run. Let's hear the other side. I want to hear the anti-cooperation side. Tell me what's wrong, because I'll tell you this right now. They have found stuff in our feasibility study that could be better, and I was like, yeah, it probably needs to go. Right? Like, and I was like, let me fix that, you know, and you know, hey, this number's off by 0.25. Like, is that right? Yeah, I guess it is, right? So I'll take that feedback.
You have humility.
Right, and I point out some stuff in their things too, where it's just like, you keep telling me a city staff is useless, but I spent a day with the Gulf Breeze folks, and they were working real freaking hard, you know. So some of this like discussion and debate and running against each other brings out a conversation.
Right.
And if not for you, Cindy, we wouldn't have this. I don't know if we'd be talking about any of our electoral process.
That's why I'm running.
Yeah.
That's why I'm running, because people
need
need to know that those tabulators are not as secure. I don't believe they're as secure. They have an Albert sensor on there to detect a hack. So what does that tell you?
Right.
Obviously, it's hackable.
Yeah.
And it should not be in use in our elections.
And if there's a way to make it better, I think it's going to come from discussions like this. You know, from
right.
whether you win or lose,
even
at least you've created a discussion. Yeah.
Exactly. If the incumbent would implement these ideas and do the things that we need to do to tighten up the election integrity, I would be perfectly happy with that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I'm just stepping up to take this place because we're on the precipice, and when we get on the other side, we're going to need people like me with courage and guts and innovation and ideas and solutions and implement them to get us where we need to be. And there are 13 of us in Florida, which constitutes 40% of the 67 SOEs. So there are 13 being challenged in our state.
Yeah.
That's a significant amount that we could get into Tallahassee and make the reforms.
And all it takes is a couple, and then they start showing stuff, right? And then if they find anything, boom, then there it is, right? Like, so the more accountability, the better, right? Amazing stuff. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go through a couple of the comments here we got. Like I said, Randy was in here. Tom was in here. Thank y'all so much for watching. Looks like we got about 6 or 7 folks that are still watching live. My wife was in here, Catherine. Good to see you, baby. Thank y'all for watching. If you've got questions for Cindy about this, please let us know. You've got some forums and stuff coming up, right? When's your next interview? I know you've done a lot already. So you got one tomorrow, I think, with Tommy. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. I have the podcast with Tommy tomorrow.
Awesome. He's great. We've had him up here as well. So I love Tommy to death. He's awesome. But yeah, so Election Day is August 20th, right? So that's going to be the big day, but people can vote early, right? So definitely go and do that. Encourage friends to do it. Your website, I think I had it up here, is
CindyHallCampaign.com.
Yep. Cindy, there it is right there, Cindy Hall Campaign. How can people donate? They can do that through their website, right?
Yes, at the antidote.
Awesome. And I think your email's on there as well. They can donate, you know, or contact you if they want to get involved, wave signs, all that stuff. Well, great.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure hanging out with you for an hour. You're welcome anytime, and best of luck on your election. We'll see what happens. Thank y'all so much for watching. So, as I said at the beginning, we do this every Thursday. We get to hang out with really amazing folks like Cindy, heroes of the community who are standing up for important causes and doing great stuff like this. So if there's somebody that you want to see interviewed, let me know. Don't forget preservenavarre.com is our website. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all those great things. If you've got comments for her or me about this, let us know, and we'll see you next Thursday. Bye, y'all.